In the last video, parts had started to arrive for my crashed BMW M135i, and that means I can get on with the repair. And in particular, I was about to repair the air duct for the oil cooler, so let's pick it up from there. It's just a case of, are there clips or screws? Does it snap on? You know, that sort of stuff. Let's have a look at it. And in the end it was pretty easy because it just snapped into place and then there were just a couple of trim clips. Next up I've got this lower bumper support. It just goes on the end of the chassis legs at each side and just supports the front of the bumper at the bottom. £170 from BMW, but I got this for £75 used from eBay. So nice to get a bit of a saving. So next up we've got this impact absorber, and it just goes on the front of this, I don't know, aluminium crash bar, is that what we'll call this? The previous owner obviously had replaced the bumper at some point, didn't fit one of these, so you can imagine his new bumper wobbled around all over the place, and these cost about 37 quid, but you'll see them for double that on eBay. Yeah, I'll go figure, huh? This just pops on here somehow, and that'll be another part fitted, and we'll be closer to test fitting my new bumper, which I'll reveal in a minute. So the impact absorber just hooks over at the top and then snaps on at the bottom, so it was a doddle. Yeah, that looks good. So we're finally starting to get to an exciting part of the project. Yes, it's great doing all the rebuild and getting this crash damaged car back on the road, but I didn't want to get it back to just standard, you know, the way it was. I wanted just to add something a little bit more interesting about it, and that's where this huge box comes in. And it might be giving it away just a little bit, but I want to say a big thank you to MJ Modifications, because these things were really hard to find and they managed to get one in stock for me so that I could continue with my project. So without further ado, let's get this box open and see what goodies are inside. I'm sure some of you out there are aware that this is an M2 Competition style front bumper, and I've had a good look at this off camera and I must say the quality is spot on. But even so, MJ Modifications recommend that you do a trial fit prior to sending this to paint. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do now, so let's give it a try. So that trial fit went okay, but there were a few problems for me. So one was this oil cooler duct, for whatever reason it wasn't fitting behind my new bumper. And the end of this foam bumper support here, that seemed to be interfering with the parking distance sensors, which are molded into the bumper but actually don't exist on my car. So let's have a look at them. I'm going to trim away everything that I know I don't need, because they can only cause me problems getting that bumper on. And it fitted across the top here, so that was nice. But it was just a couple of inches off here, and then I wasn't convinced it was fitting underneath quite as far, just a little bit off again. So what I've decided to do is grab the Dremel and cut off those brackets on the back of the bumper that I don't need on my car. It might seem a bit extreme on a 600 quid aftermarket bumper, but just looking at it's not going to get it fitted, so I'll do that, then I'll test fit it and I'll see what else might be the problem. Oh, let's give it another trial fit and see what's going on now. So that's actually fitting a lot better just with those small mods I just did. But if I just trim say 10 or 20 millimeters out of this oil cooler ducting here, then that'll just allow this left hand side of the bumper to fit back properly so that it matches up to the wing and at the top here. So I'm going to mark that up and trim it. So I only trimmed a little bit out and it wasn't enough. And then I realized there was probably a better way, which is to heat that up and just bend it out of the way a bit. Okay, so it's not as tidy as I hoped for. Maybe I got a little bit too much heat in there, who knows? Maybe I can sand that back a little bit, or maybe I won't bother. Alright, try again. Okay, that's about got it. Now that I know the bumper's gonna fit, I'm just gonna put it off to one side to keep it safe, so I've just put it down there. And then I'm just gonna come back to these yellow calipers and that yellow front brace there. And I know what you're thinking, ooh, shiny. So there's two reasons why I didn't like this. One, I didn't like the yellow, but I can understand how that would, you know, look good with the black. But the other is one of the previous 5 owners, and I've got my eye on you guys for any bodge jobs on this, just painted this without sanding it down properly. So there's areas where the black had flaked off and then they just painted the yellow over. Come on, autofocus. And so you can see how uneven it is in some areas. Not a good enough standard for me. So I've been busy sanding away. It's just taking too long. So I have a little rotary sander. I'm going to see if that speeds things up for me. So get this thing on. It's the only way to shut me up. And because I've got delicate ears, one of these. Okay, so as you can see, it's looking a lot better now. But I'm sure some of you people are saying, but Phil, what about all these pieces in here that you can't get into to sand easily? Well, the answer is behind you. It's behind you. And there you go, the answer is I have a shot blast cabinet. Spent a little bit of time getting this hooked up and getting it working again because it's been stashed under the counter for a while. But anyway, just going to get this thrown in. Let's see how this works out. Okay, so I'm no painting expert, but what I do know is if this is just a rough surface here, then you can do a couple of stages. So I've got some 400 and then some 1500. Probably there should be something in between, but that's what I've got. But these bits at the end and in the middle, which I shot blasted, I'm not going to mess with those because I was using aluminium oxide and it leaves a bit of a coating behind, and it feels kind of ready for paint, does that. Okay, so I had a lot of fun sanding and shot blasting, and it did take quite a lot of time, but I'm really happy with the result because this is super even now and we're back to the bare metal everywhere, which will give us the best possible result. So I've just got a clean microfiber cloth and I'm going to put plenty of panel wipe onto it. This is kind of like a waxer, degreaser, oil remover, you know, all rolled in one. You can see it's coming up dirty on the cloth. And because the cloth was so dirty, I'm actually going to do it again. Because it's aluminium, you need a etching primer. So this POL stuff is one of the best that you can get in a rattle can. So that's why I've chosen it. Just need one coat of this, one decent coat. Tom Cruise has got nothing on me. It's 2 minutes of shaking, so you have to do something to make it more fun. I just had a bit of a break for lunch because you can't rush a good paint job and it's important that that fully dried. Okay, so time finally for the colour coat. Think Ferrari and Lamborghini brake calipers, that's the sort of red that I wanted. So I came up with this Rust-Oleum automotive enamel and the colour that I chose was bright red. And I'm going to use this on my brake calipers as well, so I've got a couple of cans of this. So a bit more shaking up the can, I won't make you watch it all this time. And then the following day I put on 2 coats of clear coat to protect the red. And I removed the brake calipers from the car and I gave them the same treatment. And I'd love to get that big one on, but can you see it's just not going to happen. Yeah, it might be a squeeze, but I might just get the medium one on. Okay, so this is a little bit trickier than I thought because you have to peel the back off and you got to make sure all of the little small pieces, they all stay on this front piece, and some of them try to stay on the back, and if it starts coming away with the backing then you have to kind of press it back on and try again. Oh, there we go, alright. So ready to go with that. What do we think? I'm not committed yet because I haven't pushed it down everywhere. But I think that E's pretty central. And I'm just going to press that firmly on everywhere. Never done this before, so fingers crossed, huh? Nice and slow, nice and slow. Check it out. I don't know what you guys think, but I'm pretty pleased with the result there. Obviously I've no idea how well it's going to last, but in terms of making them look like the Ferrari and the Lambo Brembos, I think I'm pretty happy with that. So here's the problem. So our nice new shiny red brake calipers are going to attract people's eyes down into this area. And have you seen the state of this hub? Okay, so it's only surface rust, but it still looks pretty horrible. I used a wire wheel to take the loose rust off, then I masked it off, and then I applied a couple of coats of primer and then a couple of coats of matte black. And finally I could reassemble the brake caliper back on. And this is the end result, and it's looking a lot better. So now it's time to turn our attention to some of this panel damage here. And I'm sure I mentioned before that I'm trying to save money on this project. I'm always trying to save money on the project. Of course, I still want a good result too. Yeah, and the plan that I'm currently working on is to replace these panels with ones that are the correct color already. And this color is called BMW Sapphire Black, paint code 475. And I know one of the problems is, even if you have something painted the exact same paint code or color, is it going to match in? And I'll be honest, I don't have that experience yet, so I'm going to give it a try. And the reason I'm going to give it a try is because a rule of thumb is it costs about £350 to £400 to paint each panel. And that's on top of the cost to get the panel in the first place. So I bought a new bonnet, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But I also got a new wing. Now this wing may not look bad, but unfortunately there's enough paint missing that to make it look right, it'll have to be painted. So again, that 350 quid per panel I talked about a minute ago. So let's go to the bench and have a look at this new wing that I've got. So let's give this a bit of a dust off. And you can see that even though it's the right colour and it looks in pretty good nick, there are some surface scratches on. But I wasn't expecting it to not even need a buff. So a lot of this stuff, even marks like that, will buff off once we've got it fitted on the car. But what won't buff off is this rust here. So this is actually one of the brackets that holds the front bumper to the wing. And it's not too unusual for these to get the paint chipped off them and then rust. But because it's quite thin, it'll rust away in no time. So what I'm proposing to do is to treat that and then repaint it to give it some protection. And then also here, there's a screw that snapped off. And this is the bracket that holds the front wing to the bumper. But I've got one on my existing wing, so I'm going to see if I can swap that over to here. Okay, so let's get to work on this. Yeah, so the first thing I'm going to do is just get this little bracket off, which I'll probably use again later. And because this is only a small repair and it's just surface rust, I'm just going to use a Dremel because that's ideal for something just small like this. Okay, so even though now that looks rust free, there'll still be traces of rust in there. And if untreated, it'll just come back through the paint again. So what I've got is some Hydrate 80. Which is a really good rust converter. Yeah, just going to get it painted on there, really. Get plenty of it on there. And then just the back edge where it's a little bit harder to show you guys. Okay, I'm going to be in danger of seeming overly fussy here. But can you see this small amount of bubbling here? Well, at the moment, it's just the most minute amount of rust behind these edges. And 5 minutes, well, maybe 15 minutes now, of just lightly sanding that back and then doing the rust cure, and then I have some black paint and just painting over it. It'll never be noticed there, but it'll stop this wing from rotting out in just a few years' time. I'm going to go ahead and unbolt the old wing, because that way once this one's ready to go I can just go bolt it straight on. And I'm going to make a start by getting this rear part of the arch liner off, because I know there's at least one bolt at the bottom there that I need to get to. So I really want to get to this screw, which I have to do from underneath. But as you can see, I can't really get my socket in easily and get a turn on that. So I've loosened off quite a lot underneath. So this is the under tray, and this is the aftermarket little side skirt, and this is the normal side skirt. But even with those loosened off, it hasn't really helped me that much. So it might seem a bit unorthodox, but what I'm proposing to do is put a little hole underneath there, which will just be big enough for me to reach through with a socket from underneath. It needs to be 80mm in from this edge, so about there. Now I'm just going to reach in with this pick and do each one of those little brackets. For some reason that one's facing that way and the others are facing the other way. Okay, so those three are all loosened off. I'll just put this screwdriver here to stop it popping back into position. Now finally turning our attention to these bolts on top. The bolts along the top of the wing are hidden by this plastic cover, so you just need your trim tools so that you can lever each one of them out and then get access to them. So now we can see there's one more screw here, and actually there's another one just right at the top corner. Okay, so in theory that's everything unbolted, and this wing should just lift off now. So let's see if that's the case. And it did! How about that, huh? So while the paint on that wing's drying, I'm going to look at getting the bonnet off. And I haven't removed the bonnet for quite a while, but it looks pretty simple. A couple of bolts each side, and then just some connections. There's like an electrical connection and the washer fluid connections just here. And there's just this thing to pull down first to give us access. And then we'll just get these disconnected. There we go, they're all different, these things, but I think I'll push at the back. Sometimes they need a bit of persuasion to make them see your way. There we go. And then it looks like there's just a little clip on this, and then that'll pull out, so we'll see. This bottom one needs to come off completely, but the top one's on slots. So if I remove the bottom one on both sides and then just loosen the top ones but don't remove them completely, I should be able to lower the bonnet a little bit and then just slide it out the front. And this looks like a perfect job for my expensive ratchet spanners that I don't use very much. And I'll just remove this one at this other side as well. And then, as I mentioned, these ones that are on slots, I'm just going to loosen them slightly. Seems it's ready to slide, is that? And now back to the other side, and I'm just going to watch to make sure the bonnet doesn't fall on my head as I'm undoing this. I dropped the car down a bit lower on the ramp, and then lifting the bonnet off is much easier with two people, so I had to get the boss out to help me with it. So I just lifted the new one on exactly the same as the old one came off. Didn't have the camera set up for that, but you can imagine what it was like. Quite simple. The bolts at the bottom aren't tightened up yet, so I'm going to try my best to locate the nuts where they were. You can almost see the outline where it was painted. I've got that electrical connection and the washer fluid connection, so let's have a look at that. I imagine there'll be hours of fun later trying to get this aligned, because there's so much adjustment on all of these bolts on both sides. But that's for later. I just need it something like so it doesn't foul when it shuts. I don't want to chip any of the edges. But that's looking okay. Let's get this new front wing on. And the new wing bolts on exactly the same as the old one came off, but there's lots of adjustment on pretty much every bolt. So you can spend a lot of time messing around with these, and it's kind of worth doing because you can get a much better panel fit. So that's pretty good down at the bottom there. But if we pan up, then this lip's getting bigger and bigger. That's okay because I haven't tightened up any screws, but I can just almost get my fingers behind there, you see, but it's this screw over here that holds it. So I can maneuver that position a little bit. There we go, you see. So I have some adjustment. And of course these panels flex a little bit as well. So anyway, let's tighten that screw down a little bit. Otherwise it's just all over the place and you can't get anywhere with it. That's not too bad actually. Remember, there's another screw that you access from inside the door hinge when the door's open, and that can hold this a little bit as well. It's a combination of the position of this and the position of the other. You can push this panel in and hold it and tighten up one screw, and then flex it a little bit and tighten up the other one until you get this right where you want it. But you need it something like before you open the door, because if you get it drastically wrong, then the door can hit the wing and then crease it. Okay, that's alright. Now we're finally ready to get this wheel arch liner in. So now just a whole bunch of screws to put back in. Okay, so this episode had a lot of work in it, but I'm hoping that you agree that it's really brought the crashed BMW M135i forward. This is what it's looking like now. Now in the next episode, and I'm feeling a little bit nervous about this, I'm going to attempt my first ever DIY spray gun paint job, and I'm painting that BMW M2 Competition front bumper. So hopefully you'll tune in to see how I get on, and also hopefully you're enjoying this content. If you are and you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe. If you're liking the content, please give me a thumbs up, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, bye for now. Get out of here, go on. This is like an alternative method of checking your washer fluid level. So on the driver's side here you can see there's an electrical connection. Sorry about the strimmer.